The last one. Pauline is going to move it with a question, and Sarah will second it. That's cool. So Pauline, far away. All they're going to do is say they're going to take the report as read.
Do you want to say it?
Oh, great.
Just want to say what a brilliant report it is.
Yes.
And page 165, you're promoting that you're working on the next adaptation planning area. What are the options for those areas? We've done Thanks Peninsula.
I think that update relates to the chat team, and that would be better to get direct advice from them. I understand they're currently engaging with community boards around what that might look like. So otherwise, in terms of process, it might be easy.
I thought we already had, Sarah, you might remember because you were on the second care box and then identified. No?
It hasn't been. So the working group has been
stuff. Okay. So when will you know? When will you make it?
It's a work in progress, and they are doing the stakeholder type engagement, and then it will be coming back to council to consider. But I don't know the exact date for when it will come back to council. But
and you might not.
It won't be till after the elections.
Right. You might not be able to answer the next question because it's around the three waters, the mussel shell trial in the Wickram Basin on page 166. But I'm wondering why we're not also doing that in the Addington Brook. Because particularly since they're so good at filtering out zinc, and that's one of the major contaminants in the Addington Brook. So is it a costly trial or? Yeah.
Councillor, both the Addington Brook plans are for Addington Brook and the Riccarton stream to have those mussel shell filters.
Oh, are they? Oh, great. Okay, thank you. That's me done.
So good, those ways too.
What answers?
Kia
ora. This is probably for the planning team. I was under the understanding that the tree canopy, referring to page 170.86, I was under the understanding that the tree canopy retention was denied.
It was. So the independent hearings panel on Plan 14 rejected the proposal from council for tree canopy provisions. There was, in the resolution from 2nd of December by council on Plan Change 14, there was acceptance of the recommendation from the hearings panel, but there was also a resolution from council to advance a new plan change to relook at tree canopy provisions in light of it failing in Plan Change 14.
Okay, that makes sense. And the next question is probably for Mary. I see that this plan here, we've got quite a significant amount of things on track from each unit, and it all looks really great. I've just got a feeling that it's sort of BAU, and if we refer to our climate change report a wee while ago, it says that we're not sort of delivering on things. Are we not aspirational enough in a lot of these things that we're asking our units?
Well, the thing is that the climate change team has worked with every unit in the service area for the activity plans, and in each activity plan there's actually progress and targets that are being put in, and they're working to achieve that, and the team works with them to support that. If the council wants more inspirational things put in that, we could actually look at that at the moment, accepted through the LTP.
I see. Okay, that's great work. It seems like it's too great.
They might be encompassed in the two new additions at the end.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, that's great. Thank you guys so much for that. It's awesome.
Sarah, did you have another question?
Yeah. Thanks so much. So there's like a much more comprehensive report. So it's really good to see. Thank you. Lots more detail on these. A couple of notes. When you talk about the urban tree plan and those kind of things, it looks like a really small number of trees. It's good. It's great for parks. They're doing a huge amount of work. It would just be great to look at the wider tree planting program that we've got as a city, because actually, you know, there were tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands of trees planted last season, not just 2,000. And there's the urban park program, but there's also all the regional parks. There's the even Otakaro River Corridor. There's a whole range of places that get planted with trees to increase our canopy cover. So
just to clarify, you'd like to see maybe a summation of all of the planting we do in the next update rather than just focusing on the urban forest plan?
Yeah, because it's all of our tree planting that counts towards the good stuff for our city, not just the urban forest plan. Yeah, which would be great. Is there anything in here about, apart from the fact that your report format and the type of information in it addresses the concerns of the Office of the Auditor General, have there been any other things that have come from that report that have been implemented as an organisation? So those who don't know, the Office of the Auditor General looked at our climate change program, and there were some recommendations and some positives and some concerns in there.
So most of the recommendations that we focused on were regarding reporting, and a lot of that went into the improvement of this.
Yeah, which is great.
Report. There were some comments in the Auditor General's report about governance matters, which we haven't looked at. I thought that would be you all to discuss if you would like to.
Yeah, I mean, the report was never presented at council. It would be good to get it circulated to councillors. It had some concerns about governance in the climate space and the current structures that we have. Yeah.
Circulated.
Yeah, I did, raise it at the time because it's been some time since that report came through. Yeah, I think it needs circulating into discussion at some point. That would be good. Thanks.
There's no button there, mate. Just talk.
Thanks, appreciate it. I see there's reference to the Avon Otakaro regeneration plan. I didn't see any reference to the Lower Heathcote plan where we're proposing to do significant planting as well. I think some consultation plans have just come out for that.
So, sorry. I was just going to say that this isn't an exhaustive list of everything that we're doing.
Okay.
And so if there's elements that should be added to the list to provide that transparency and tracking, we can definitely talk to the relevant teams and have them included in this list. It's just a balance because climate change goes across just pretty much everything we do. But yes, that might be an initiative we can highlight.
I guess I was really keen to know if there's a way that we could do better measurement around what's happening with the Pawaho Heathcote in terms of the impact of development on ecology, the loss of biodiversity, and the impacts of climate change on that area. There is the Lower Heathcote master plan as a starting point, and there is some overlap with the urban tree forest plan, but okay, that would be cool. So I guess we can just give feedback. That's the best way to do that. Cool. The review of the healthy food policy and the sustainable, sorry, I'm just trying to find the healthy food action plan. Is that going to include land use planning considerations or input? And also, is it going to include talking to, I guess it would be our corporate team around the contracts that we're letting for things like bus shelters, advertising boards, where we see a number of unhealthy advertisements.
Do we have Sarah online from that team?
I guess for me, like in Linwood, for example, we see a huge prevalence of fast food outlets and a huge prevalence of advertising right adjacent to schools.
I think I understand those pieces of work are being considered together as part of the policy review. But if you'd like a further update, we can probably get that from the team. But my understanding is they will consider those issues as part of that more holistic review.
Come back with some advice.
I think that would be good.
I'd like to see the connection that with McDonald's and climate change as well. We've that report.
And then the other thing was, is there a Canterbury Climate Partnership plan with the Merrill Forum? I know we're talking a lot of the work the Merrill Forum's doing. And have we got a list of what we're funding now? And
Yeah, we are contributing to that Canterbury Climate Partnership plan work. All the councils contributing, and that was decided in the long-term plan.
But we're contributing at a much higher rate than any other council because of our population.
So we're contributing the same amount as ECAN.
So do we know what projects are going to benefit us as a city? And one of the things that was raised is, are we going to get consistency of monitoring our emissions across the region, like from each council?
Yes, so that is one of the 10 projects within the plan, is looking at how they're monitoring regional emissions and also doing an action plan towards reducing those emissions. That's one of the 3 largest projects of the 10 within the plan.
If it's possible, I'd appreciate getting an update on that. If we can get some information circular. Thank you very much. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Great. Victoria, then Mel.
Thank you. My question was just a follow-up to Councillor Templeton's, which has asked for more information on the tree planting over and above the urban forest. I'm mindful that a lot of the planting is happening by various community organisations. My question is just quite simply, is that data available to us? Before we go and commit to saying, yeah, we're going to do this, I just want, is the information, and can you actually accurately report on that?
We have to go and discuss with the parks team how they would scope it and what that information they have available. I'm sure that we can look into what is available.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. There's a few questions. One is about the transition to EVs, and you've talked about here some replacements, and quite a few of them have still been into internal combustion engines. I was wondering why that is.
We're looking at what's fit for purpose and what's on the market now. In some vehicles we can't meet the needs. We had staff members stranded, a member of ELT stranded on the peninsula last week because the range of the EVs wasn't sufficient in that case. So we look at...
Still there?
And she's still out there. That's why she's not here today.
So we do look at fitness for purpose, but wherever we can, we also try for lower emissions. So you will see some, when we, for instance, replacing utes, moving into more plug-in hybrids in that space. And when there's more electric utes on the market, we'll be replacing those with electric utes. But it's really, we're balancing fitness for purpose with the emissions reduction aims.
Sustainable and Edible Garden Awards, there's 3 board areas that do that, and you've noted here that the other boards are not interested. I was wondering why that is.
I'd have to refer to those boards about why they put the opportunity up. I think my understanding is that engagement happened from that team with those boards, and they decided.
I guess with something like that, there's other awards actually, if I'm thinking about community boards like the Youth Development Fund, for instance, they have different application criteria across boards anyway. So I think it would be nice actually if council was to give a directive that these things were city wide as opposed to choose, because it's hard for residents to understand that. And I think you know, it's interesting which boards are doing and which ones are not. So I also think if we don't talk when the new term comes, we have new community board members who know nothing about these things, and then, you know, 2.5 years later you find out, oh, so-and-so's got some award and it's never been brought up and you haven't thought about it before. They're the types of things that, because this is climate related and food resilience and all that sort of stuff, should be brought by governance teams as a matter of process to boards at the start for them to consider them again afresh each term. And the last thing I wanted to mention was 2 other things. One is the thermometer idea. Where has it got to?
So,
I have a memo here. So I understand that a memo went to Mayor and councillors on the 31st of January regarding what happened with that item from Kate and Craig.
So there is more information now on our updated emissions tracking page available to the public. And so some improvements have been made so that it's easier to see our progress over time around things like uptake of EVs, cycling uptake, and that is progressively being improved over time, just so that there's more of that transparency around the data that we do have. And so that was led by the communications team, and you should be able to access that, and the public should be able to access that to see how we're tracking against those different items.
So part of the purpose of that was to get this information, and that's really good. I'm not saying it isn't. I think it's great, but it's the problem with that is when these things are like anything is on a website, you only find it if you're looking for it. And so these sorts of things, the idea with the original concept was a big poster or something like that, but it could be that these things are posted on the council Facebook page and come up regularly for people to see, that kind of thing. So I would like to see more there for that.
No, just note one thing. Katie has signalled that there would be a little bit of advertising and pushing around the thermometer. So I'm not sure what the status of that is as a side to any additional things we might do. But I do understand there was going to be a little bit of online marketing to give that some headline room.
Yeah. And then the last one is, what are we doing for tracking our CO2 emissions and future modelling? We had CCHL come in and they had all of the CCOs come with graphs of their modelling for emissions. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but council should be doing that as well.
So that was in our draft emissions reduction plan, which has been reported to ELT.
Okay.
We'll eventually, once we've had that, yeah.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Sarah?
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask that the draft implementation plan. So is that soon? Because it's been waiting for a wee while.
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not sure the exact timing of it.
Yeah, that would be, if we can get back to us, that'd be great. And following on from Mel's one on the communications, I think we have like a pre-existing resolution on communications, and there was some budget and those kind of things to do that more front-footing advertising and stuff, more public-facing rather than just on the website, like Mel said, which is just you have to know, you have to be interested already, rather than showing people who might not already be interested or are busy, which would be great. And so I don't know what's happening with that, but it's just not just the thermometer, but the wider stuff that's happening soon, isn't it?
I'm not clear across what the communications team might be doing, so we can probably get an update from them. But I would say that apart from that, we have our It's Time Canterbury. Yes, in the context of the Canterbury Climate Hunt, and they are going to do more of that engagement as well.
We've done that for several years ago, and it just has never panned out, which is why one of the reasons we've got some budget on to do our own stuff now. And the stuff that they do isn't necessarily very widespread.
I guess the other element in the report that is an example of advertising and campaigning would be the Work on Cycle Your Way.
Yeah,
so that was quite a successful campaign, and so there might be opportunities to kind of do more of that type of thing. But there was a very good uptake from the target audience, which was families and seeing some of our existing cycleway infrastructure. So I thought that was quite a good success story, and yes, that would be good to see more about that.
Thank you. And when it comes to old resolutions, there's a really good section in your report on the resolutions that we've already passed, but they've only been ones from this term. And we have pre-existing resolutions from previous terms, and I don't know how they've been captured with the change in committees to portfolios, all of those kind of things. I did check at the beginning of this term to make sure they were all captured. So there's a variety of decisions that were made that were climate related. And I don't know if you guys had those.
Yeah, those resolutions that we've reported on are the only ones that are assigned to us. We wouldn't necessarily have visibility of all the resolutions that council's made.
Yeah, so I think process-wise, like as an organisation, we need to make sure that they, because we didn't really have much of a climate team at the beginning of this term. So how do we get the various resolutions from the Sustainability Committee that Vicky Buck run, and then the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee of the whole, so it was a full council decisions.
All the resolutions that are open, or all the resolutions.
Just the open ones still. Just the open ones to make sure.
All in the system, but
just that they.
So
I know that there were open climate ones that aren't being addressed here, so.
Because the open ones, even in the manual before we went to Info Council, were captured and put in Info Council, so they will be.
Yeah, that'd be great. Cool, thank you.
Okay. Hey, this is great. On page 164, that it says wastewater treatment will say 70%, which is good. That's what's contributing to it. When just so I'm on the right track, when the activated sludge thing goes in, I'm thinking in my head that we lower that number by 60%. Is that right?
No.
We're not sure exactly what that number will be.
Yeah.
The early modelling did show there would be a significant reduction, but my understanding from the three was to give more information, but that modelling would need to be done in more detail because it's kind of theoretical, very high level at this stage.
Yeah, I think when Michelle presented it, she said that's what the model is, but we'll have to measure it for a period of time.
Yeah, fair comment.
To see what
that's fine. And with our wetlands, it's all very well having this by graph saying this is where we make it. With our wetlands, do we know, and this is very simplistic drain layer way of talking to you, do we know how much CO2 a hectare or a square metre of wetland uses up?
Wetlands are very kind of poorly understood. It's an area of research at the moment.
That's why I've asked the question.
And some of them are essentially sinks that will store carbon, but depending on the phase of it, I guess, or weather conditions or how wet or dry it is at any given time, there are elements that will emit CO2 as well. And obviously it depends on individual wetlands are so different, depending on the vegetation or the mud or the sediment. It is very difficult to know that. And that's why I guess the emissions trading scheme just focuses solely on trees because you can easily physically see the tree, see how much carbon's been sequestered by the size and the age of it. Whereas other things like wetland grasses or soils and those things, we know they do theoretically sequester CO2, but quantifying that's a lot more difficult at a large scale.
Because say take like down at Waitaki Basin, we've just opened up the edge of the river, and that makes a new wetland. That one be quite small, but on the other side of that, it's going to be a massive one.
Yeah.
If we had a number, and I realise it's hard to get, and you'd have to have an average because, as you said, some wetlands are far better than others. So wet, they dry, they're too planted more. If we could have this is how much on an average use up CO2, we could put that against what we're creating. You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I understand. In terms of quantification, it is just like very early days, and so none of the sort of the verifiers or auditors would accept that as a number that we could put against that, whereas trees are a lot more understood, and that's partly why. And so there is a lot of research at the national and international level about trying to get some better understandings of that in order to quantify it in a way so you're not sort of massively overestimating something which, won't be actually delivering. And so we'd love to know that as well. And so we're sort of keeping up to date with some of that research, but
you're leaning in that direction.
Yeah, we can't.
Okay, Yanni, then Pauline.
Just on the tree issue, I know we've got a tree policy, it talks about planting, 2 for every 1, but it doesn't actually capture the carbon that's lost. So the trees down Emmett Street, I mean, the loss of carbon from those trees would be way, way greater than anything that we would plant in the short term. Over time, that would start to offset the impact. So I'm just, I'd be really keen to get more information around how we're measuring trees. The community boards are supposed to get an annual report on trees planted, trees removed. And it would be good to have actually the carbon impact in that, if that was possible.
We are planning to do that for the future. So some work is underway with staff at the moment across some parks and through waters in particular. So there's quite a few steps to take, including some aerial surveying.
Yeah, I think that policy was from 2018, I think. So anyway, the sooner we can get it, the better.
And just trees removed bit is a bit trickier as well because it's not essentially lost as such. Like it depends what you use it. If you burn it, then it's different than if you use it in a building or a table or something like that, it's actually, it's still there, we haven't lost.
Yeah, and that would be really cool. And this is the final question for me, was around the carbon clock. Are we able to get advice? I mean, I don't know what Mel's vision was for it, but it was something that I raised as part of the rebuild as well. Having a public, facing monitor of our carbon emissions and what's happening in real time. And I just note that we're putting advertising hoardings up at or advertising boards, digital billboards up at the new Paracore. Probably they'll be at Te Kaha. Is there any more thought around what we could do on our own facilities in the central city to have like a carbon clock or carbon thermometer or whatever you want to call it? Because it does seem a bit weird that we're promoting, I mean, at the moment, I think we'd be promoting McDonald's and we'd promoting a whole bunch of things that were adverse for the environment or for healthy food, but we're not.
Some advice about that when we're coming back.
Thank you, Yannick. We're down to two. We're down to two. Kelly, which is going to be extremely short.
It is short. Thank you. Obviously, there's a tremendous amount of volunteer and community work going into replanting in the red zone. Do we have any idea of the attrition rate a year later, 2 years later, how many of those trees are still alive? Do we have a concept?
That's probably a question not to this team, but to so we can come. They can include that information in their next updated.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Thank you, Kel. And lastly, Aaron. If I'm hanging out to
quick
work.
one on the measuring of the wetlands. Do we measure the sequestering of carbon from grass and grassland?
Not for council's emissions, we don't. Yeah, again, that's a very poorly understood sort of science as such. Like we know it does attract some, but obviously at different levels it's very hard to
I watched the
quantify.
documentary on the grassland.
Thank you, Aaron.
Well, no, if you do an AI search, it says grass is as much as trees, but maybe that's wrong. It'll be deep fake.
Small trees, very small trees.
I think it depends on the type.
No, that's good, but you're leaning towards it, and it'll
round as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to put that motion. All those in favour.
No, it's such a, I really enjoyed this report.
It is
Thank
good.
you. And it actually shows us how it's looking at everything that council does, every area, and how this it impacts and how we can affect our emissions and climate change strategy. So it's very clear, and I really enjoyed reading it, and particularly the new bits at the bottom there, I think. So you're looking at the solar and battery strategy, hopefully 2028, but that's maybe when the funding kicks in. So just thank you. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay, so very good. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. That is carried. Thank you very much for coming in.